You are currently watching the first update on Force 13 over now Hurricane Matthew, which is located in the eastern Caribbean with winds of 75 miles an hour and a pressure of 993 millibars, and is moving towards the west at about 17 miles an hour, about 150 miles to the north-northeast of the ABC Islands. This is as of the 5 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center, and this storm was just recently upgraded to a hurricane this morning. The storm is expected to move towards the west and eventually west-southwest, skirting the coast of South America, which is quite rare to say the least, and could strengthen to a Category 2 hurricane this weekend. It might threaten Cat 3. If it does, though, this would be the first major hurricane to exist in the Caribbean since Sandy of 2012. And the system's landfall point is either going to be in western Haiti, Jamaica, or eastern Cuba near Guantanamo Bay. That is the most likely scenario at this point. And by Tuesday, it should emerge near the Bahamas, and after that, it really is uncertain. Some of the models are saying out to sea, and some of them are actually skirting it up the eastern seaboard. It's way too far out to tell right now, but let's stick with the current situation. Right now, we have tropical storm watches in effect for the ABC Islands of Aruba, Bonaire, and Chiraco, I believe it's pronounced, as well as from the Colombia-Venezuela border to Rio Hacha, I believe it's pronounced. Tropical storm watch means tropical storm conditions are possible within the next 48 hours, I believe. 48 or 36, I'm not entirely sure. Though I think that should be upgraded to tropical storm warnings for the ABC Islands, in my opinion. So that's what's going on with the warnings right now. Let's look at some developmental factors going in the way for Matthew. Sea surface temperatures, not an issue whatsoever. 30 degrees, 29 degrees, plenty warm. Wind shear actually had kind of took a toll on the system this morning. The low-level 7 was exposed for a few hours, actually, but then a recent burst of convection came up and recovered the center. I'll show you that in a minute. But it's decreasing over the storm, and this area right here is moving towards the west. So this really isn't that much of a concern right now. If this slows down, this might be a problem, but Matthew should slow down before it should, because the trough is eroding. And you can see that over the water vapor imagery. You can see here's Matthew right here. Some dry air just to the south of Haiti. But it doesn't look like enough to really affect the system all that much. So it's looking relatively good for Matthew right now. Let's take a look at some computer models, and this is really where everything has been, focused at today. The ECMWF is saying that the storm will kind of stall to the north of the Rio Hacha area, and then move towards the north and make a landfall. And I'm seeing this for the first time, making a landfall in Haiti, and then moving it towards the northwest through the Bahamas, bombing out at 931 millibars, and then shoots off to sea. But we have to take all beyond the Caribbean. We have to take it with a grain of salt. That's just something we have to do because out past then, it really is hard to tell. GFS model has actually started to make some sense these past few days. Moving towards the southwest, stalling, and then towards the northwest. Making landfall on the eastern tip of Jamaica, it looks like, and then in eastern Cuba, through the Bahamas, and out to sea. This morning it was saying it would make landfall on the Outer Banks, but looks like it's not doing that anymore. And let's take a look at the surface pressure, because that pressure that was shown on that graphic really isn't really an indicator of how strong it is at the surface. But this graphic will, and it says it will peak at least 956 millibars, which would tie Gaston's record. But that has to be taken with a grain of salt as well. And then bombing out again, 926 millibars, but then again, that's not really something to be concerned about because, as we discussed earlier, it's way far out. The CMC model is saying that we will have a storm that moves through the Central Caribbean, obviously stalls, make a landfall in Jamaica, and further west, actually, making landfall in mainland Cuba, close to central Cuba, and then moving out to sea. Most of the models are taking the storm, offshore the eastern seaboard, but still has to be watched. Let me go back a run right here. The 12Z from the NavGem is showing a storm that should move towards southwest, stall, and then do pretty much what all the other models are doing. And kind of looks like it might stall off the coast of Virginia or the Del Mar, but that's not good news. HWRF for Matthew is saying that this storm, this is 850 millibars. Let me change it real quick. There we go. It's saying that it will, do... Oh, wait, this is the wrong run. Let me switch back. My bad. And it will... Looks like it's going to move towards the southwest, Stall, move towards the north, kind of, strengthening along the way to that could be a Category 4 right there, unfortunately, and then moving towards the northwest and it ends around the central Bahamas, which, if that happens, then that would be actually the 1-year anniversary from Joaquin back in early October last year. Taking a look at the GFDL for Matthew, saying that the storm will also become a pretty powerful hurricane, as all the models are saying. A bit further west than the other models, actually, and actually might have it pretty close to, I think this is Grand Bahama or Luther Island. It's one of those two. I'm not entirely sure. So that's what's going on with the computer models right now. I won't take a look at the ensemble means because it's just too much to go into detail. I don't have enough time for it. Basic track guidance is showing the storm more tightly knit, either landfall in eastern Jamaica and Cuba or just Cuba and move off towards the north. Intensity guidance shows the storm either Cat 1 or Cat 2. I imagine towards Cat 2 at this point. Some take it to a 3, though not a lot. So that's what's going on with Matthew. Taking a look at the satellite imagery, you can see in these first few frames how the center was exposed briefly. Recent bursts of convection overtook the center, and now it is strengthened to a hurricane. It looks like it might be trying to form an eye on that last frame. Not entirely sure about that, though. Excuse me. You might be able to see a bit better on this how the system is kind of it looks kind of elongated, but the circulation is closed and circular. So there's no issue with the actual center circulation. Here you can see that dry air kind of better towards the south of Haiti. It looks like it might be fading away a little bit, but you never really know. Maybe one of the outer bands of Matthew could take that away. And yeah, it's looking overall okay for storm of its intensity. If I wouldn't have known what the intensity was, I would have guessed it would have been a minimal hurricane. This morning wasn't looking that great either. You could see how the bands are out towards the east. They've been kind of staying over here. Fortunately, this is not over the Lesser Antilles. It's just to the west of them. If this would have happened over the Western Antilles, there would be some real problems. But fortunately, none of that is going on. You can see how towards the south of the system, it's a bit drier. And that's because as this eroding trough, is pulling some drier air up from Venezuela, and then over these mountains in Venezuela, and then it sinks, so it dries out the air down here. But Matthew has moved towards the north of that area, so it's in a more hospitable environment if it were towards the south. Because if it was further south, 1, you would have land interaction, and 2, you would have that sinking air down here. And this is moving a little bit quicker than it was initially, but it's expected to slow down as it nears goes just north of Lake Maracaibo, then should stall and then shoot off towards the north, as I showed you with those model runs. You can see this pretty good burst convection over the center. Looks like it might be trying to fade away in those last few frames, but still looking pretty impressive. And yeah, not much really else to say. It's a pretty decent storm right now. It could get up to a Cat 2 or Cat 3, in my opinion. I'm edging towards Cat 2 as well as a lot of other people here at Force 13. I don't think it's going to reach Cat 5 as some people thought. That's just a possibility. That's just way out of line. It just doesn't seem right at all. So that's the satellite imagery. So Matthew isn't the only thing going around the world. We have Index 97E, which could become our next storm in the Eastern Pacific. What's left of Roslyn, also in the Eastern Pacific. Tropical Storm Ulika, which has been downgraded to a tropical storm. It was a hurricane earlier yesterday. Invest 99W and Tropical Storm Chaba, which could pose a threat to Japan in the next coming days. So that's what's going on around the world right now. The Atlantic compared this year, it's been more active than these past 3 years, certainly. But the strength of these storms hasn't been necessarily impressive at all. This is only our 5th hurricane, despite having 3 named storms, and all but one of those hurricanes were Category 1s. Matthew may become a Cat 2, as we discussed earlier, but yeah, the strongest storm of the season remains Gaston, only storms that have really impacted the land this whole season, really, in a big way, were Earl and Hermine. Matthew would probably be the third storm to do that. So that's pretty much it for me today. Thanks for watching, and yeah, stay tuned for more. You can follow Force 13 on any of its outlets. You could follow Force 13 on Twitter and Facebook. Force 13 all in text. You can add Nathan on Skype at Fool13. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This has been Hank Dulce signing off.